So in a recent video, Joker, Better Bachelor, just want to preface this video from the very beginning that I'm a supporter of Joker. I'm subscribed to his locals, and I support him, of course, on YouTube. And for the most part, I think a lot of the videos that many of these men do are accurate to some extent, or for the most part. But in this particular video, I very much disagree with his take. In a recent video he did talking about the most dangerous creation in society is a man with nothing to lose. Now, I understand the premise of the video, and you might think that this is a case of that from his standpoint. Unfortunately, there are some very key facts that are not spoken of in this video. We're going to give a brief listen, and then we're going to look at some of the more important facts that perhaps some people are unaware of and haven't taken into consideration to how the local people feel in regards to what's going on in their country.
You know, if he's going to be protecting his well, I don't know if he's protecting his family and his loved ones, and he's going to take.
Now, in this video that he's talking about, this is basically a video, for quite some time in Western countries. For those who don't understand what the premise of this video is that we've seen, typically you see this, like, for example, in a lot of European countries, where people they'll go and they're protesting about oil, and you'll see them smear, blood or oil or paint or whatever it is, on a glass covered painting. Now, most of these paintings that are in these museums are fake. They're just remakes that they put up there that are for the public to see, and people think that they're real. They just go through the motions that these things are real. They're not. Most of these things are fake, and they're just put up there for the public to see. Now, if you watch most of those videos where you typically see these protesters doing this stuff, it's almost like nobody stops them until, of course, after the fact. And for the most part, I think most people are smart enough to understand that these people are paid, but they might understand why. And it's from our perspective, we look at it as annoying, why are these people allowed to do this? And this is why. So when things like this happen in other countries, well, then we look at it from the perspective of, oh, it's these damn annoying climate agenda people. But let's listen from Better Bachelor's perspective.
Take away people that are threatening them. He's got definitely reason to fight, right? To fight back against whatever's holding him back. But when a man doesn't even have the family and he doesn't have kids and the rest of it, there's nothing left for him to even love or care about. And that's when it's time to, maybe go hog. And this is a video about a guy that really seems to have nothing left to lose. And he just ran out of F's to give, and he decided to do something about it. The reason why I think this is an important video is, number one, it's going to show you when people kind of get fed up, what can happen. And then I'll talk a little bit more about how it reflects to today's society. So this is from the Daily, And
again, talking about the video, if you didn't understand what was going on in the video, this was basically a white man living in Panama. He was an older gentleman, 70-something years old, and killed two Panamanians who were, quote-unquote, blocking the road. The typical protesters that you see, like in Europe and the United States, where they're blocking the road, talking, climate agenda narrative. And so from our perspective, for people who are more right wing or conservative, we're like, oh, this is nonsense. There's no such thing about this. It's all a fake agenda. And this is basically the outcome, an outcome where you F around and find out. This is basically the premise for the video.
Daily BS from Bo Snerdley. He says, like a movie scene, 77-year-old motorist ends the lives of two people, protesters, blocking traffic. You guys have seen these oil protesters going around smashing up paintings and spraying everything orange and sitting in traffic, keeping everyday people late to work, or in some cases blocking ambulances or fire departments and other things. And these are just people that are tired. They're trying to, their life is not easy. They're just trying to do their 9 to 5 to feed their families, to try to just make it to the next day. And then you've got these idiots that I understand protesting and everything like that, but there's a point in time where you start screwing with people that are probably not in a good place, and something's going to happen. And in this case, it did. They say, as climate activists took another intersection to block traffic in what has become one of the several predictable protesting methods, the unthinkable happened when an angered motorist opened fire, ending two of the demonstrators. The shocking incident took place in Panama, and images were captured and posted to social media, where the debate unfolded about whether this was not so surprising result of protesters being allowed to physically block traffic with few consequences. For those of you here on Locals, I am going to play the videos. For those of you on YouTube, I cannot because YouTube. So if you do want to...
And so for quite some time, this is basically what's been going on in like Western parts of the world, where they show this, protesters being annoying, blocking traffic, people dragging them out of the way. And so this is basically the narrative that you have a lot of these protesters. And of course, basically this whole video that Joker did is talking about, from the standpoint of a man. And of course, that at some point in the video, there's like a tweet from Matt Walsh talking about how the left has been, annoying people with all of these protests. But what wasn't covered in the video was actually going on in Panama. See, in Panama, this is not something that is just a few climate agenda people that have been pushing. There have been huge protests in Panama, because for what people don't understand is that Panama basically came under the control of the United States in the early 1900s. Originally, Panama was under the control of Spain, and then during the Spanish-American War that existed, I think it was like in 1898, I believe, eventually Colombia took over Canada, and then I believe in like 1904, 1903, Panama became independent and signed a treaty with the United States, and basically became a colony of the United States. It's obviously not a state, but it doesn't exist like Puerto Rico. But for the most part, America controls the going-ons in Panama. And so what was happening was there were huge mining projects that were going on in Panama, and this was between Canada and Panama. And so what you get from a lot of what's going on in these Western countries, where you see a lot of these climate agenda protests, where they virtue signal that we're so great, we're not deforesting, we're not destroying our lands, we're going to get away from oil, we're going to go, EVs and what's it called? We're going to be using all these solar panels, we're going to save the planet. But then in other countries, like in Panama, they practiced deforestation. And so for the people in Panama, and this was an opinion piece that was done by a tropical ecologist in Salt Lake City, Utah, right? And so he talks about what was going on in Panama, and of course, what had been happening through the Cobra Panama project was there was unauthorized deforestation of huge swaths of the rainforest. And of course, also, you end up with toxins leaching into nearby ravines. So it was basically poisoning the water for the nationals, for the Panamanian nationals, as it goes on to state, poisoning water, and then of course aggregating climate change. And for the people in Panama, now this was a deal that the people in Panama had protested very widely and very openly. And of course, we don't know what's going on in Panama. We just hear about this small incident, but many people don't understand why. So the people in Panama had been protesting for quite some time. And I'm just going to cut in briefly here in the video as I came across this doing a little bit more research. Now, in a video that was done 11 years ago, this is a video that was done by PBS. And the title of the video is "In Panama, Locals Protest Canadian Compromise." So what you're seeing is not something new. This has been going on for the better part of a decade. And then it eventually led to what Better Bachelor is talking about with this gentleman shoot somebody. It got very few views. This video got 7.8K views 11 years ago. I'll leave the link to that video for those who are interested in learning more about how they reported the incident. And this is back then. This is where we're talking over 11 years ago that this video was put out. That basically the Panamanian government signed over huge portions of these mines to Canada under a deal. It was like $4 billion deal. But the outcome of what was happening in their country was that it was basically destroying large parts of their country, destroying the land, committing deforestation, and poisoning the water. So the Panamanian nationals were protesting. They were like, we don't want this. And then the government signed it into law anyway, because Panama, for the most, as I said before, is basically under the control of the United States. And so what you get here is we talk about how wonderful we are, how we're going to save the planet. We've got ESG scores, right? We're environmentally safe. Oh, we don't use plastic straw. Oh my God, who will use a plastic straw? We use paper straws. But in other countries, this is what goes on in their countries. So Western countries will go into these second and third world countries and they'll destroy them. They'll excavate all of the minerals, leaving huge parts of the area completely destroyed, just like what you see here, right? This is basically a previous copper mine in Salt Lake City in Utah, and this is basically what the land ends up looking like in those countries. And so the people were protesting this, and of course then you have this white guy that's living in Panama shoots two of the locals because they were protesting. And it's important to take these things into consideration, because I think this is kind of the point of why we see the annoying climate agenda people. But the reality is in many of these countries, this is actually what goes on. And so I had stated this before, that a lot of the virtue signaling that you see in regards to, oh, we're going to do away with slavery. Oh my God, slavery, it's barbaric. But the intention is to hold other countries back. And so people don't quite understand, well, we have oil here. Why don't we just dig here? We have mines here. Why don't we just dig here? And it's because if you're willing to take paper currency for us destroying your land over destroying our land, well, then obviously we'll destroy your land and we'll give you some paper currency and we'll walk away with your minerals. And this is the point, that this is what the people were protesting. And of course, the AP News also talks about this, that our environmentalists were arguing that the mine threatens to destroy much of the dense forest and imperils local drinking water. So of course the people are going to be upset. Now, this isn't, just the annoying climate agenda people as we talk about it, and as Better Bachelor talks about it, and of course as Matt Walsh goes on to say, he's just annoying leftist. And so if you don't understand what's going on in many of these countries, you'll just think, it's just these annoying climate people. They just need to go away, right? As they say in this video, this is F around and find out. And many people in the comments section actually say this exact same thing. But from the standpoint of the people in Panama, well, they're watching their country get destroyed. They're watching their natural resources be pillaged by Western countries. And so the people obviously are going to protest. And of course, that article didn't mention anything. The one that Joker reads, it doesn't mention any of that. It doesn't mention any of the deforestation. It doesn't mention any of the drinking water that's been contaminated. It doesn't mention any of the pillaging of resources for paper currency. And it's overwhelmingly because that's the point. The point is to create this narrative of annoying climate agenda people, so that when other people in other countries start protesting about this stuff, then you just think, it's these damn annoying climate agenda people, not realizing what's going on in their country. Anyway, I just wanted to throw my 2 cents into this, as it's important to understand this is very similar to what went on in Cuba. Many people might not know that the United States took control over Cuba in 1898, again during the Spanish War with Spain, because Cuba was originally run by the Spaniards, and when America supposedly did away with slavery in the United States, they were doing a lot of slave trading in Cuba, right up until like the early 1900s, like 1903, 1904. And then eventually America put a puppet in Cuba. And the exact same thing was going on in Cuba until Fidel Castro came along. And of course, our history that we learn about Cuba is, oh, it was socialism that destroyed Cuba. And it was like, no, it was the people. The people stood up against the Americans that were doing the exact same thing. They were in essence colonizing their country. This is what was going on in the early 1900s, and in the late 1800s. There were a lot of American corporations that were in Cuba, and they were pulling a lot of the sugarcane out of Cuba. And that's basically what Cuba was known for at that time: slavery, overwhelmingly of black people, and sugarcane. And then after Fidel Castro pushed the Americans out, then America banned them from, they, put embargoes on the country. And so that's why Cuba fell into poverty. And this is why Cuba ended up siding with Russia. And so if you don't understand history, and the only history that you get is from the standpoint of America, well, then you're wholly, misinformed, right? As much as America loves to talk about misinformation, they're the biggest misinformers of what goes on globally. And I've talked about this in the same thing when it came to Germany, and how Germany, for the better part of 100 years, since World War I, has basically been a vassal state. This is why you see all those military bases in Europe. This is why Europe is full of military bases. They are, in essence, occupied. And so if you don't understand what has been going on in history, then you'll look at stuff like this and you'll just completely miss the mark. You'll just think, oh, it's just another damn climate agenda people that are just annoying us. They're interfering with our lives. Another fuck around and find out moment. When the reality is, for many of these people, they're enslaved. They're watching their country be pillaged, and at the same time watching that exact same country that's pillaging your country virtue signal about how great they are for the environment. How would you feel? Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.